Hey everybody, this is Minion Soldier, and this is the Piracy Show. Now, as was hinted at yesterday, and a little bit I think last week, when you do missions, sometimes some new things appear at the mission locations. So, normally, this show is all about piracy, right? But today, I'm going to show you something different. A gold mine. Now, last week, of course, you saw me, going and doing one of the delivery missions. And while I was there, I happened, or it was actually, no, sorry, it was the mission for Rudo to go pick up the corpse. And while I was at that location, there was, a purchasing panel that was there. And I looked to see if you could buy anything, and none of that had been enabled yet. But there were a few containers of controlled substances lying around inside the base. So I tried to get them back to my ship, but they disappeared. But it seems that they don't always disappear, and these have become something of a regular fixture in a lot of these illegal mission locations. Remember yesterday when I was talking about the value of playing with others and all that? Well, you're gonna see that pan out live, because you see all these empty pallets here? These once contained something that unfortunately the original player who was here sought to destroy for a mission, whereas we don't seek to destroy them, we seek to take them and sell them, and that is what we did. And there it is. Yes, pallets upon pallets of drugs. What a great little touch. What a great little feature. That's kind of one of the cool things about kind of avoiding a lot of other people's talk about the PTU and kind of running into these things and then kind of being like, oh my God, this is great. It really kind of preserves that kind of, that surprise and that, holy crap, this is a really cool thing. And so, as you can see, as we ran into this, all of a sudden, all members of the group kind of converged on this place, and there was a couple of cutlasses, and this is why I flew out there with the hammerhead, because I wanted to get out there very quickly so we could start work, and it did turn out to be quite profitable. Now, there's been a little bit of a shift in the prices of these substances, but it turns out that one of the best profit ratios going is if you don't actually pay for the drugs in the first place, or maybe you spend a few clips of ammunition to acquire them. And that's what we did. And I really like this. I really, really do like this. There's a part of me that's always going to be kind of looking at things with a bit of a critical eye, and there's people out there who obviously don't like that. But it's things like this that I really like, things that add a little bit more depth and add a little bit more realism. Because how many times have you been playing a game and thinking, why can't I just pick all this stuff up? I mean, there's all kinds of loot here. Why can't I just carry this away? Now, seeing something like this certainly isn't uncommon. In the previous generation of MMOs, many times when you'd be running a dungeon or whatever, you would sometimes find these large storehouses, either gold and all kinds of treasures, or money and things that you just couldn't pick up. Even in GTA Online, there were, very similar stash houses that you couldn't realistically raid, whereas Star Citizen allows you to do that. Now, in the previous versions of games that where these sort of things were there, of course, allowing this much money into the economy without some form of tight control on it was probably something very scary for developers, and it promised out of control inflation or things like that. But in the context of Star Citizen, it actually makes sense. When you think about it, this is competitive. This is open to interference. It's possible that other players can show up and raid this while you're trying to scoop it all up, unless you have people up top flying security, protecting the operation, organizing things. This is something that takes a lot of effort to do and quite a few people to accomplish. I mean, even when we were doing this, we were sitting there going, next time we got to organize this better. We got to bring more people. We got to put, different teams in different places, and we got to, quickly, clean this place out. This was more or less oh shit, let's just grab all this stuff as quickly as we can type thing. And it wasn't really, there wasn't really a concrete plan in place when we did this. But this is one of the things that I love. I absolutely love this because it's kind of taking your hands off the reins and letting players do what they want. And yeah, you know what? It's possible that the right players with the right ships could possibly hit an enormous windfall, especially if they're very lucky and they happen to be operating in a place where not a lot of other players are operating, and they can kind of get away with this without being tracked. But at the same time, I have to say that the competitive nature of the Star Citizen universe kind of, it kind of puts the brakes on things. Sometimes you kind of have to almost take your hands off the wheel and just have faith that it's going to work out and see what develops from something like this. And the fact that we are in, early access, the fact that we are in pre-alpha, this is kind of the place where you want to test out some of these ideas and see what happens with it. And it's unfortunate that we don't get this much access with other games. Imagine the types of gameplay that this could lead to in other games had they given players access earlier and tried out some of these ideas, even though to most game developers something like this might seem absolutely outlandish and just like, what are you kidding? You're just going to put a storehouse of drugs worth a ton of money in game and just leave it out in the open for players to raid? Like, you think that that's a good idea? That's ridiculous. Your economy is going to spin out of control. But the fact that they're willing to test it, the fact that they're willing to let us play around with this sort of thing, I can't help but applaud this. There's a lot of things that I do take people to task over, but this is something that I absolutely celebrate. There's a risk here. There's, and there is the potential for high reward. But, once again, these are things that you just can't, fly into Hurston and sell on the open market. There's going to be, some restrictions and some penalties to trading in this material. But at the same time, there's also the potential for great profit and also some great PvP if someone decides to interfere with you. This is the type of gameplay that I wish that there was more of in games out there. I wish more developers would take chances like this. Now, maybe I'm misinterpreting what I'm seeing. Maybe after the mission is complete, all of this is supposed to despawn and we're not supposed to be able to do this. But if it is intentional, and I hope that it is, I hope that it's something that continues. I really honestly do. I would like to see the economy be very generous where great risk is taken, where players are obviously running the chance that they could be interfered with, that bad things could happen. They should see a greater reward. They should see a lot of potential for reward. When you think about, say, flying a cargo ship into dangerous space to, make a trade run that maybe, carries a lot of extra risk with it, the profit margin should be something that, it isn't like, okay, well, I'm going to sell, I'm going to buy a bar of iron for one UEC per bar, and then I'm going to sell it for 1.11, UEC at the destination. The profit margin should be something that, even though there's a lot of risk, you're like, yeah, but if I make it, if I get that money, it's going to be worthwhile. A lot of people run risks at Jumptown because of the profit margin. That's why a lot of people were there, and that's what made it such fun gameplay. That's what made Jumptown so amazing. Is going in there sometimes solo, you were just like, oh my god, if I get caught, this is gonna suck, but if I pull this off, it's gonna be amazing. And that's great design. That's good design, and I hope stuff like this continues and is expanded upon, with things like data running and all the other illegal careers that you can get into. And as you can see, I'm exploring here. Look at all of this. I mean, there are just pallets and pallets and pallets stashed all over here, and there's a back room back there. There's even more pallets. We were sitting here giggling like school children when we kept finding more and more of these pallets of drugs hidden all over this underground base. This was honestly the most fun I've ever had playing Star Citizen. I was giddy like a little kid under the Christmas tree, you know, looking at all the presents. I was just like, oh my God, this is so great. And I think that that's kind of where sometimes, yeah, there are things about Star Citizen I don't like. There are some things about Star Citizen that I find ridiculous. Certainly the wait has been brutal. But there's things like this that just make me feel like in some ways they are just so on the right track and they are so ahead of the game. And there's going to be a lot of MMOs that are just sitting there and spinning their tires, and they don't realize that the world is changing under their feet and they're pretty much about to be left in the dust. This is amazing. And I hope that, honestly, one, that this is intentional, and two, that this continues, because this is great. Sure, we got away with it this time, but I would love to, see people competing over things like this. I think this just breeds better gameplay and a better game by having competitive and very lucrative possibilities out there in the universe. So I'm going to end this video here because obviously you can imagine it took quite a while to clean this place out, and it was indeed worth the trip. But suffice it to say, please, CIG, please continue with this. Continue with this. Anyways, that's the show for today. I've got more boxes to carry. I hope you enjoyed it, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.